Hi students, in this video I'm going to show you how to contextualize a document. So right now I have this document in front of me, which is the first document for the India case study. So let's see what the 3 steps are to do this. Well, the first thing it tells me to do is to put the title, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I could just copy this and paste it here, and that should be enough. And the second thing it asks is to read the origin of the source and the historical context. So that's this and this. This is the first thing you should be doing, to read and annotate the source and the context. So let's do that. I'm going to read and annotate using my highlighter. All right, so who's the source? Romesh Dutt. It's 1908 and England. That's important to note. But let's go ahead and read a little bit. This excerpt was taken by Romesh Dutt's book. So notice it's a book. That means maybe he's trying to sell it, or trying to make profit out of it. And it was written in 1908. And every time I do these highlights, I should be also putting a thought bubble. Basically, what do I know that's going on around this time? I know 1908 England is colonizing. Oops. So I know 1908 in England is colonizing India. So England colonizing India. And let's figure out who he is. Okay, so he's a Hindu Indian. Just by knowing that Hindu Indian, I'm thinking he's probably going to support the Indian side. But let's keep reading. He was part of the Indian Civil Service, which administered the British government in India. So it looks like he works for the British government. Let's put a comment there. This shows he is on the British side. This shows us his perspective. It's important. Dutt was a member of a high caste. Oh, that's important too. He's a member of the high society, which means if he is rich, then maybe how is this going to affect him? Let's think about it for a second. If a person is born generally rich, do they know what the poor people are going through? Probably not. So that's going to affect how he looks at this whole issue. He's probably going to say, oh, India is okay. If he is rich, he never quite lived or understood the poor perspective. And he had the opportunity to study in England. Interesting. Again, if someone is studying in England, they probably really never lived in India. Didn't really live in India. How does this affect him? Well, it shows us he doesn't know what's going on in India. After he returned from England, he was hired by the British government to become the assistant magistrate in the Indian Civil Service, and later became the president. So notice he was hired by the British again. So what does this tell us, guys? If he's hired by the British, is he going to support the Indians or the British? Most likely the British. He's not going to say anything bad about the Indians. Why? Maybe he wants to get a raise to move up. If he is hired by the British, he probably will defend them. Perhaps he's trying to get a raise or not be fired. So now that we know all these things about him, these will really affect what he's going to say. And so let's actually, first of all, read the let's pause here and write down whatever we know right over here, which is in step 1, all the stuff we found out. So who's the speaker? Is Romesh Dutt. He was, let's go back to see, Hindu Indian and a person of the high caste. He was a Hindu Indian and member of a high caste. What else do we know about him? We know he's hired by the government. He was also hired by the British government to work in India. Okay, when was it written and where was it written? 1908, England. It was written in 1908. This was published in England. Okay, what was happening at the immediate time it was written, or who could be the audience? Well, since it was published in 1908 England, and he was working for the British government. Well, let's think about it. If he's working in England, he's working for the English, and it was published in England, who's going to read it? Most likely the government, the British audience. The audience could be the British people, the British government, and other educated Indians perhaps too. But most likely the British is going to read this. Okay, what was happening to the country's government, economy, and society at the time it was written? Well, let's think about it. What do we know from the PowerPoint, guys, on what's happening in India around this time? Well, I might need to pause my video to look at my PowerPoint. Well, it looks like right before this, in 1876, there was a famine. The Indians were starving because the British controlled the economy. I also know that the British really taxed the salt and forced them to only buy British goods. So all these things were things that happened right before this. I also know that the people of India were protesting with Gandhi because they were really upset. So these are all things I could write in context skill card, in the context right here. So during this time, the economy of India was suffering. There was famine because the British wouldn't let Indians make their own food or run their economy. What else do I know? The people of India were protesting. They were unhappy that they were being controlled. What do I know about the government? Well, do you guys remember anything about the massacres during this time? There was the Amritsar massacre. Well, I guess it happened right after that, but even before that, the people of India were really upset that they couldn't protest peacefully or they couldn't run their government. So during this time, the government of India was being controlled by the British, and many Indians were not happy because they didn't have a voice. Okay, good. Now we did the step 1. Let's do step 2. Read and annotate the entire document to identify the main argument, then write the summary. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. The British have given peace to the people of India. What a blessing. Okay, so this Hindu guy is saying that the British have given us peace and it's a blessing. Interesting. They have built schools, so it's showing us all the good things, and introduced the people to education. This has helped educate the people and has introduced them to the new ways of thinking and new ways of living. Oh, so it's saying that they've been helped. The British have built a government that is strong and fast. The British have made good laws and established courtrooms and judges. So what is this showing us? It's showing us all the good things that the British have done, like that they built schools and improved the government. So let's summarize that. In summary, the speaker is saying that the British have helped India by building by improving their education and providing opportunities for children to get educated. They have also built a stronger and more peaceful government. So now, this is a part that is the most important part. Read again to see how the context shapes the meaning or significance of the source. Here's the part where we're trying to find the bias, the perspective, and to see what was happening during that time that we wrote in step 1 that could influence his writing. We actually already kind of did this, but let's think again. Based on what you know about the speaker, what bias or perspective did they have? Well, let's see. We know he's a Hindu Indian, he's of high caste, and he works for the British government. So, like we said, if he's hired by the British government, he's probably going to defend them. Or if he's of high caste, he's probably really rich and never lived or understood the poor perspective. So let's go ahead and type those up. Since the speaker is a member of the high caste, which means he's rich, this influences his writing because he does not write about what's going on with the poor people because he's never lived with them and seen their suffering. He's never been poor or died of hunger. What else do we know about him? Since the speaker is blank, this influences his writing. Well, we also know he's hired by the government. Since the speaker is hired by the British government, this influences writing because, well, if he's working for the government, he's probably not going to say anything bad about them because he won't say anything that goes against the British government in order to not lose his job. He probably also wants a raise. Okay, this is good. Now let's move to the next one. Based on what you wrote in step 1, what was the author's purpose in writing the piece at the time? Why do you think he wrote this, guys? Let's see. Well, maybe he wanted to tell the British people what's going on. It could also be that he was covering some things up so that the people of India won't protest. Maybe he was really scared of the protests. It could also be that he wanted a raise, like we said. Let's do this one first. During this time, the author wrote this in order to stop the Indians from protesting. He was influenced by the context because during that time, the Indians were really upset that they were being controlled by the British and were protesting through civil disobedience, which is what Gandhi led, a movement led by Gandhi. His purpose could be to bring peace and order to India. What's another reason he might have written this? What was going on at that time that he might be ignoring? Well, it could be because he wants a promotion, he wants to move up. So, why the author wrote this was in order to get a promotion by the British government. He was influenced by the contents because during that time, the British had full control and say in who gets power. So maybe he only wrote good things about the British so he could show them that he is loyal to them. And that's it. That's how you write context.